providing insight and resources for your spiritual journey. Unity Online Radio. Thank you for tuning in for this Unity Partner Program. Unity Online Radio partners with spiritual leaders from organizations whose mission and messages complement Unity's. We are pleased to bring you this program on Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world.
Welcome to the Yoga Hour, Living the Eternal Way, offering insights and practices for spiritually conscious living today with Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien from the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment in San Jose, California. To ask questions or join in the discussion, email us at theyogahour@unityonlineradio.org. Now, here's your host, Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien.
Good morning and welcome to the Yoga Hour, time to open our hearts and minds to the infinite. I'm Dr. Laurel Trujillo, hosting the third in our series of conversations about Dharma with the Yoga Hour's founder, Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien. Today we'll be sharing some insights and time-tested practices from the ancient system of Kriya Yoga. Yoga is a term that is familiar to many, if not most people today, but often it's thought of in a very limited, narrow way as perhaps a system of stretching or exercise. But in fact, yoga is a Sanskrit word that means oneness, union, or unity, and really is talking about the bringing together of our attention and awareness with our essential spiritual nature to be restored to our original wholeness. Our topic today is living the Dharmic life, living a life that is worthy of you. What does it mean to live a Dharmic life? How can we live by the soul's radical inclination to fulfill its potential? Today we'll be discussing how the teachings and practices of Kriya Yoga support us in living our lives with meaning and purpose. As many listeners know, Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien is the founding director and host of the Yoga Hour. She's an acclaimed spiritual teacher, writer, poet, and the founder and spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment, a Kriya Yoga meditation center with headquarters in San Jose, California. Yogacharya teaches nationally and internationally and has received several community service awards, including the 2015 Mahatma Gandhi Award for the promotion of religious pluralism. She is currently offering a year-long online course called Dharma 365, which is a comprehensive immersion in the Dharma studies and practices for discovering your higher purpose and living it every day with heart and meaning. And you can find out more about Yogacharya O'Brien and the Dharma 365 course at the websites Ellen Grace O'Brien, Ellen Grace, I think you know how to spell, O'Brien, OBRIAN.com. So ellengraceo'brien.com and then csecenter.org. So welcome, Yogacharya, or Umaji. I'm delighted that we can have this conversation today on the Yoga Hour.
Thank you so much, Dr. Trujillo. I'm so delighted that you host the Yoga Hour and are facilitating this conversation with me today. It's wonderful to be here, and I greet the listeners with a bow, honoring the divine in each one.
So before we begin our dialogue about living the Dharmic life, Umaji, would you lead us in a brief meditation?
Oh, absolutely. That would be great. So let's have this be a yoga moment, a moment of joining our attention and our awareness in the deep core of our being. Begin with a chant of Om, the primal sound. Om. In the beginning was that pure existence being, which moved into expression as all that is. That energy, that vibration permeating all life, the creative force and power that is within us and expresses through us, is us. We are that. So in this meditation moment, we begin to be aware of that reality, which is not only beyond all creation, but through it. Remember that we are that. And as we meditate, as we pause for a yoga moment, we remember that right where we are, that reality is, God is, Spirit is. So breathe in to your divine being. Breathe into your self, your true self, that which is unbounded, infinite, free, beyond time, beyond words, beyond thought, really beyond the breath. So as you breathe in and out, take special note of the tiniest pause that's between the in-breath and the out-breath. The tiniest pause where the breath changes and it moves from in-breath to out-breath, from out-breath to in-breath. When you become aware of that place where the breath changes, see if you can expand awareness of that still point. And touching that still point, let us draw from it peace, power, wisdom, and joy, and take that with us into our day, remembering that God is our life. We are that, and that peace goes with us wherever we go.
Oh, thank you so much for that delightful pause, that yoga moment. I love to start our conversations that way. And I'm so excited that you're here today for our third program in the series on Dharma, which we began by discussing the 4 goals for spiritually conscious living: purpose, abundance, pleasure, and freedom. And then our second program was about how to live with higher purpose, which arises from knowing the goal of life, self-realization. So it's just a little bit of a review. Let's talk just for a moment about the Sanskrit word dharma, which has several meanings. Can you remind us about them, and particularly how we are using it perhaps in our conversation today?
Yeah, the word dharma is very much like the word yoga. You know, we have a certain understanding of the word yoga, but of course it has many meanings. You know, we think of it with spiritual focus and understanding, yoga as meaning, you know, to awaken, to be self-realized, samadhi, as Patanjali refers to the word yoga. But of course others, as you say, think of it as hatha yoga, as exercise. In the Bhagavad Gita, we find several explanations: yoga as skill in action, yoga as freedom from sorrow, yoga as even-mindedness. So it has all those meanings, and dharma is really the same way. You know, we think of dharma as purpose, which indeed it is. its root means to uphold. So it's really lovely to contemplate this word Dharma, because it means the divine order, the cosmic basis of order and purpose that is there in life. So it's the basis of our a spiritual quest. It's the basis of our social order, of our moral order. It's this divine order. I like to think of it that, that keeps the planets from running into each other. And so there's this divine intelligence and order that pervades all of life. And then as we bring this understanding into the human experience, it's the order that has us understand, what our purpose is, to fulfill our potential as spiritual beings. That's what it is for us to live with higher purpose in harmony with this divine order. Everything in nature has a purpose. Everything prospers in accordance with its own nature. And so for us, Dharma, our purpose, our higher purpose, is to awaken spiritually and live in harmony with that cosmic order, that divine order of the essence of all that is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just really beautiful. So you created the course, Dharma 365, as a year-long online program that includes many parts. So there's monthly practices, weekly lessons, and daily inspirations, along with questions for contemplation and for journaling. What inspired you to create the course?
Well, I always do these things for myself. Of course, I have the intention that they will serve others and be a support, but often the inspiration comes out of what really, interests me, how I want to live, and in the highest way. So the Dharma program came from my own exploration of what it is to live in the highest way and how we can do that every day. And so it was something I wanted to put my attention on, and I wanted to put my attention and intention on it every day. And so that's where the program came from. And then I had the marvelous opportunity to share it with people. And so people can, subscribe to that program and participate, anytime.
Mm. Yeah, I did want to kind of underline that. People can start the Dharma 365 program at any point, and you can find out more about it at ellengraceobrien.com. So, as the name Dharma 365 indicates, the course is meant to be taken over a year-long period. What inspired you to use that particular format? What's the benefit of engaging with this topic over the course of a year?
Well, Dharma is something, of course, that we discover. We look at, what it is to live with higher purpose. And, of course, I remember, meeting my spiritual teacher, Roy Eugene Davis, who is a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And, and just for me, that meeting was transformational. It was the point at which I stepped onto the path of really spiritually conscious living. And, that's what Dharma is. But, meeting him and learning about the teachings of yoga as a path of a spiritual awakening, it's really a path of intentional living. And so, like many people, I spent many years of my adult life sort of flailing about, trying to make things work, trying to make, my relationships work, trying to find the right work to do where my heart, could find satisfaction. I could use my talents and feel that my heart was satisfied. So, coming on the spiritual path, I discovered that, no, there's really only one thing that's going to satisfy your heart. And that is waking up to the reality of what you are and having a relationship with the infinite. That's the only thing that will satisfy the heart. And then, once you do that, it's a matter of discerning, what is this thread in your life that is like a divine golden thread that has always wanted to express, that has always been with you. So it's understanding that we have a spiritual purpose and that the heart's desire is this spiritual awakening. But then we have to take it into the world and find, what is ours to do. Mm-hmm.
And that's the rub, isn't it? Taking it into the world. Think about those yogis out in the, in a cave in the Himalayas. That's the classic, picture that we have. But, being engaged in life and in relationship, that's our biggest learning ground to me. Being in relationship, for example, with my husband and, getting triggered and working through things. It's figuring out how to, bring into my life the things that I've learned in my meditation and really practice them, continuously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when we explore this idea of Dharma, of purposeful living, looking at the overarching purpose of awakening and learning that there is a divine presence and power and order to life that we can learn to cooperate with, and that our lives can prosper as we learn to align with this higher purpose, and we learn to serve life. Prior to that, most people, who have a spiritual inclination in life, or, we call it a religious inclination, are looking at, I describe it as looking at God as a subcontractor. Like we have our projects in life, and then our prayer is that God will help us, take care of our projects, even if we feel that those are useful things. When we begin to study Dharma and Dharmic living, we understand that's not an accurate, or it's not really a helpful, it's neither accurate nor helpful to approach life in that way. With a higher way of living with higher purpose is asking, what is divine will for my life? And then, of course, many people don't want to ask that question because it scares the bejesus out of them. They think, well, I don't want to ask what God wants for my life because, and I remember this in my life thinking, I don't want to ask what God wants for my life because sure enough, I'm going to be off in a nunnery, in a full habit and Birkenstocks, and I'm not even Catholic. And so, that was like, there was some fear back there that, somehow I wouldn't be able to live the life that God had given me. But we realize on this process of studying Dharma and surrendering this sense of being separate from God, that God has given us the life that we have. It's not some other life. And this process of surrendering and living our dharmic life isn't about becoming somebody else. It's about becoming in our fullness that which we are and we've always been. So, I mentioned this golden thread that runs through our life, and it's been there from the beginning. And, Dr. Trujillo, you're a medical doctor, so somehow I imagine as a little girl, you were probably healing, animals and people in your family. And, was it there from the beginning?
Well, a little bit. I definitely remember my dearest wish for Christmas when I was probably, 7 or 8, was a doll that had all of these like medical accoutrements that she came with. She had a cast that you could put on her leg, and bandages that you could put on,
Oh, that is so great. That is so great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're focusing today on living a Dharmic life, which you've described as living a life that is worthy of you. And I just love that idea, a life that is worthy of you. But can you tell us more about it? What does it mean to you to live a life that is worthy of you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it means, of course, living in the highest way. And then we have to discover what that is, to live in the highest way. There's certain words, I'm a writer and, of course, a teacher and, Kriya Yoga teacher. And there's certain words that I become fascinated with and I have a relationship with. And somehow I feel it is my sacred duty to redeem certain words in our language. I give myself this assignment. So words like God, that, people have trouble with, and because I think these words have been misused. And if people understand them more clearly, we'll be able to use them again. So God is one, duty is another. I find many Westerners, do not like that word because it feels like something you have to do, but you don't really want to do. And worthy is another one of those words. I find people just kind of contract when I use the word worthy because there's a whole idea that has to do with measuring up and judgment and, being worthy of something, and so right away what comes up is this critical sense of self, like somehow I don't measure up. But somehow one time in my research, I love reading the dictionary. That's how much of a writer I am. I go to look up a word and then I just, start reading the dictionary. So, I discovered somewhere in the roots of the word worthy is an old Latin or Old English root that means inward turned. And I thought, that's the redemption of the word worthy. It means a life of self-referral. It means a life of self-connection. Like what we're doing on the outside matches this connection to the deep self, to the true self. And that for me is a life that is worthy of us, where we are in harmony with our own being.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. So I've heard you tell the story about your grandmother and how she taught you an important lesson in living in the highest way. Would you share that story with our listeners?
You see, my grandmother taught me a lot of lessons. I was trying to think about, which one would it be? I guess with regard to Dharma and what we do with our life and the choices that we have. I remember one time as a little girl, she was very important to me. She was really like my first spiritual teacher. She had such a strong presence about her, and I really respected her. And so she would give me these pithy little lessons that still have stayed with me to this day. But I think one day, I was probably about 10 years old or 11, just getting into being active in school, probably belonging to clubs and doing my schoolwork and things like that. And she asked me to do something for her. And I told her that I couldn't do it because, and then I rattled off this whole list. I couldn't do what she was asking of me because I had all these things that I had to do. Had to do my homework. I had some club responsibility at school. I had my chores at home, and I was rattling off the whole list. And I said, I can't because I have to do these things. And she said to me, there's only two things that you have to do. You have to breathe, and you have to live until you die. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let me think about that. you have to think about the impact of a statement like that on a young child. That, because I really felt that, and I see even with my little granddaughter, you feel like you have so many things you have to do, you must do. And she just busted right through that, saying, no, you don't, these are the only things you actually have to do, and the rest of it is all choice. And so at a very young age, she made me have a sense of, I think, self-empowerment about, what I was going to choose, and how I didn't have to hold things in my life as a burden.
Wow. So earlier this year, you published another book of poetry called The Moon Reminded Me. And there are actually several different poems in there that speak to the joy of following your soul calling. So as we get ready to go to the break, would you share a poem with us?
Sure. How about The Moon Reminded Me itself, the title poem?
Perfect.
From the collection. This is a poem about dropping into that mystical consciousness, dropping into that yoga awareness where our consciousness expands into the joy of union with the beloved, with the higher true self. And when we come to that place, it's a place of joy and blessings, and the mundane things fall away in the light of that experience. So it's called The Moon Reminded Me. This morning, the moon reminded me it's never too late or too early. Go ahead. There's a way to turn without losing your balance, even though you get drunk on the beloved's wine, even though you leave your shoes behind at the Sama. Go ahead, take them off. Place your hand on your heart. Start turning toward the light. Raise yourself by yourself at dawn. Go ahead. Shine in the morning sky.
Oh, it's just beautiful. And with that, we'll go to the break. You're listening to the Yoga Hour with a special conversation today with Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien, founder and regular host of the Yoga Hour. We welcome your comments and questions. You can contact us at yogahour@unity.fm, and we will be right back.
Wouldn't you like to share the programs that inspire you most with audiences around the world? That's easier than ever with mobile giving. Just text Unity Radio to 72727 and help us continue offering spiritual programs that change lives.
What if you could experience vibrant health, help heal the planet, and be a great friend to God's animal kingdom through simple choices you make at breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Authors Victoria and Adair Moran say you can do this easily, affordably, and deliciously in their new book, Main Street Vegan. Everything you need to know to eat healthfully and live compassionately in a real world. Loaded with practical tips, straightforward information, and fabulous recipes, Main Street Vegan will help you on your journey toward a plant-based diet. The perks include more energy, an easy way to keep your weight where you want it, feeling younger as you grow older, and maybe even a boost to your spiritual life. Purchase Main Street Vegan from bn.com, amazon.com, or your favorite bookseller.
What if you could start each day with a positive outlook, remembering you are a divine expression of God? Daily Word is a booklet of daily devotionals offering positivity that's downright contagious. With a print subscription or by email, you can pause to reflect on how to practice spirituality in your human experience. Reading Daily Word takes about a minute a day, so you can feel uplifted every morning. Visit dailyword.com to subscribe.
Ever notice that there might be something not quite right, but you just can't put your finger on it? We may describe it as an inner stirring, a restlessness, a yearning to find our way home to our heart and higher purpose. Some of us may feel like we are living on borrowed time, that despite our accomplishments, what was once so important to us now just feels empty and meaningless. If you find your heart longing, wanting, looking for a path home to authenticity and purpose, join us for transformation, inspiration, hope, and possibility. Move toward your higher calling. Listen to The Call of Spirit with Evelyn Foreman and tune in to Possibility every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Time here on Unity Online Radio.
You're listening to the Yoga Hour, Living the Eternal Way, with Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien. We now return to the Yoga Hour.
Welcome back to the Yoga Hour. I'm Dr. Laurel Trujillo, and I'm joined today by the Yoga Hour's founding director and regular host, Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien. And you can learn more about Yogacharya's work at the two websites, ellengraceobrien.com and csecenter.org. And today, our topic is living a Dharmic life, a life that is worthy of us. So in this segment, we're going to be starting with the importance of intention. And I think actually we're going to have a short poem. Umaji, did you want to share another poem with us?
Yeah, sure. This is a poem I actually wrote decades ago. I mean, it's kind of been in several forms. It came out of the experience of seeing a bloom in the desert. Which seems like it just can't happen. This dry, still landscape that gives rise to these amazing blooms. So this is a little haiku about seeing that, contemplating that. It's called Desert Moon. Desert moon rising, wildflowers blooming on sand. What will you do now? So for me, that's a little haiku about seeing this dharmic intention in life, this power, this Shakti, this divine energy that is so bold as to make flowers bloom in the desert. Mm. So it's like, what will you do with that? Will you keep denying that there is that power in your life? And, will you keep refusing to bloom? And so it's a very strong question for me. Mm-hmm. What will you do now?
Beautiful, beautiful image of the desert flowers blooming under the desert moon. So oftentimes when we decide we need or want to make a change course in our life, we begin by setting an intention or resolution. Well, people, when you say, an intention or resolution, what most often comes to mind is a New Year's resolution. And unfortunately, our experience, I think, just about uniformly with New Year's resolutions, is that they don't last very long. So we might have a resolution to exercise more, and if we're lucky, that might last a month. And then we don't want to make a resolution or to set an intention because we feel we always break it. So we give up in trying to make changes in our life. So what are your thoughts about that, or what advice do you give to people when they are really at that point of wanting to make a change, wanting to set an intention, and yet also fearful of doing so?
Well, I think the power of making an intention lies in the fact that it is not a future orientation. So I think the trouble that we have and where we stumble with our resolutions is that, we're not something, we're not doing something, or we're not being something, or living in a way that we want to. And so we have this idea that we're going to change, and so we sort of set it up from the premise that we're not okay, things are not okay, and we're going to change that. So we have all this energy around making a change. But I think we can approach it from our spiritual fullness, which is that which we are in our wholeness, in our fullness, in our deep essence, and think of our intention as simply stretching out from that awareness of our fullness. So we begin with that which we already have. So we get rid of that piece of failure that's built into making a resolution to change something, because we're not that. So intention, as I see it, is starting with that which we are and letting our action then move out from that fullness. And, of course people ask, how can I do that? I intend to be prosperous, and there's, nothing in my checking account, and I can't pay my bills. And, so how can I affirm and know that I'm prosperous right now? It has to do with not, connecting that divine quality with outer appearance, shifting that. So again, it's back to self-referral, getting in touch with our innate fullness, our innate prosperity, and then setting our intention that will express more fully in our life. I think the idea of shooting an arrow is a good way to talk about intention, because when we have a resolution, we tend to think that it's a goal we're setting, and the goal is really hitting the bullseye, it's an end point. But intention says it's all the way. So it's this moment all the way. There's the stretching back of the bow before the arrow releases. And the idea in the mind of it, where we're sending it. So intention includes all of that, and it begins in the moment of fullness. So we really ask a very good question, how will you get to prosperity unless you start there?
That's really beautiful, and it reminds me of some little piece from a conversation that I had with Richard Miller last August on the Yoga Hour, and he's the one who has a program based on yoga principles for PTSD, and one of his principles is that you begin within wholeness. So you're healing within wholeness already. Right. So you're not starting from what's missing. You're starting from this beautiful feeling within, of this wholeness that's already there.
Yeah, I was reading Rumi this morning, and there's a beautiful piece from one of his commentaries on the Quran, perhaps. But anyway, he was writing about how we all have this, inner physician. And, I think you could relate to this being a physician. He said the outer physician only comes and inquires of the inner physician. In other words, the outer physician will come and say, how are you feeling? What have you been eating? How has that been affecting your body? What do you sense is going on with you? The outer physician doesn't come and assess that. First, the outer physician goes to the inner one that everyone has to ask that physician. And then he says, if you have gotten out of touch with your inner physician, the role of the outer physician is just to help you find that physician again.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, that's really good. So we've talked about making a beginning, setting an intention, and really with this realization that when you're shooting the arrow actually begins with the idea, in your mind, and includes the very first movements before even the bow is released. So to me, that's really making a turn toward God that we've been talking about this whole conversation. So what comes next? What's the next step?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when we look at Dharma, what comes next is seeing that our life is being lived dharmically, which means, in accordance with a spiritual principle. So, we look to see that our action is, harmless, that it is that is motivated, with kindness and compassion, that it's in harmony with this divine order. We make sure that we are being truthful, with what we say and what we do. We're keeping our commitments. So, what comes next is checking this sense of what it is we want to bring forth with what is the Dharmic moral foundation of life. And so, of course, with yoga, we have the yamas and the niyamas as guides, but, principally the yamas, how we're living in the world, what it looks like to live a spiritually conscious life. So we have an intention, and then we want to discern that it is in harmony with divine will, which means that it's intention that is going to serve life. That's really it. That it's not something that's simply self-serving, or even self-serving necessarily in disguise, which sometimes I see, but is really meant to be an offering.
Yes, beautiful. That idea of offering. That's great. So we were really just talking about this, but I've heard you use the phrase that Dharmic living is intentional living with higher purpose. So can you say more about that? So intentional living with higher purpose. We have these guides of the yamas and the niyamas. You mentioned, harmlessness, as one of the, niyamas, and that's the first one, and the one that kind of, I think, is the root, for me, of our action, of really recognizing that, since we are all one, acting with harmlessness is essential, because when we harm others, we're really harming ourselves. So anyway, intentional living with higher purpose. Can you say more about that?
Well, what comes to me about that this morning is you were talking earlier about, right now in the timing of this program, of course, it's November, and, we're going to come to the close of the year pretty soon, and people will be thinking about, resolving.
Right.
And I think one of the things that happens is that our goals are good goals often, but they're simply not high enough. And by that I mean they're not contained. They're not connected to a higher purpose. So, for example, somebody wants to lose weight or eat right, and, that's a really good goal. But often it's not important enough. it's not connected to something that has more meaning. And so if we have an intention that we're going to serve life by doing something that is really meaningful to us, the work that we're doing in the world, the way that we're supporting our family, then those things that really are good and they are for our well-being are sort of a subset of that higher thing that we want to do. So, why do you want to be healthy and have vitality? Because you want a longer life, for awakening, because you want to be able to serve your family, because you want to do this worthy work that you're called to do. So you just have to kind of hook those goals to a higher purpose. And then I find for me that helps me. Like I have this higher purpose that is guiding my life. And then the other things that I really want to do, I want to live a simpler life, a more focused life. I want to have healthy habits of meditating every day and eating right. Those things all are like, soldiers in my army that, have to line up in order for me to have the vitality that is necessary, to fulfill, my Dharmic impulse.
Yes, and just as you were saying that, I was reflecting on the three key practices of Kriya Yoga as defined in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So, we can use those and they really help us with discernment that you've been talking about. So, we have an intention, and then requires discipline, which is the self-discipline, one of the three, tapas. And then the one that I just love, because you can use it for everything, is self-study. So then we can see if our soldiers are aligned, and heading in the right direction, by self-study. And then, of course, always holding that desired outcome loosely, so that there's room for, instead of making God the subcontractor, you're really allowing God to be the contractor, and self-surrender, the third. So self-discipline, self-study, self-surrender, very important tools as we try and focus our living with higher purpose.
Absolutely. I think those three are our generals. They're the generals. But one thing, that I'm aware of and have become increasingly aware of in my life is that what we are doing as our intention, our Dharmic living, and what we become aware of that we have come here to do, is actually, it is our path of becoming in fullness that which we are in potential. So, initially, it's like you asked me, why did you put together this course on Dharma? That's a small example that, I said, well, I did it for myself, and what I mean by that is, we do what we are inclined to do because that's what is within us, and the process of it coming out, whatever it is you're doing as your service in the world, you can be free of the attachment to outcomes because you understand that what you're doing is your path of soul unfoldment. It's your path of your potentials becoming realized. It's your offering. It's your way of pilgrimage. It's your walking to the shrine of divine love. What you do in that sense is for you, because it's a way in which you unfold and develop.
Exactly. And what came to my mind then was the, Rumi poem about this is not a caravan of despair.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you've broken your vow 1,000 times. Come and yet again come. So, because that's what happens, right? I mean, we have moments. Again, self-study can really show us these moments where we're setting off on a course, and we don't make it. I mean, we miss, and then there's those moments where you have to just set that aside, and that feelings of failure that can feel like that can overwhelm us and make us feel like, it's like, is it even worth it to keep trying? And then just to realize that then you were attached to a certain outcome, and you have to put that aside and just keep going, putting one foot ahead in front of the other.
Well, and there, I love the beautiful questions that the sages have asked, over time. Like, what is better, success or failure? If you're on this path and realize it is your path of becoming, your path of awakening, what serves that better at any given time, success or failure? That's such a good question, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And of course it means, what we think of as success or failure. But if you understand it as the process of soul culture or soul making, of course the soul doesn't need to be made, but what I mean is the soul coming into expression. Sometimes our failures are more important than our successes. And so being non-attached to the results means that we're always turning to God as we're walking along this path. We're being honed. We're being polished, like the pearl. We're being polished so that the offering that we make can be useful.
Gosh, gorgeous, gorgeous image. And unbelievably, we've come almost to the end, and I was hoping we would have perhaps another poem. What do you think about that? or would you just like to just leave us with some words of, we have about another 1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah, poem would be great.
Okay.
And let me find one for us. I think just maybe we'll do one again about this deep experience that we can't use. It's not for the outer effect. It's for the inner transformation. So this poem is called, I Cannot Use What You Have Given Me.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot use what you have given me. When I try to give it away, it returns.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want it in the marketplace. There, flower vendors tie white jasmine together for other women's hair. I am uncovered, unadorned. Wear only that.
Oh, really, really beautiful way of closing the program. So you've been listening to the Yoga Hour. It has been my pleasure to share this time with you. I'm Dr. Laurel Trujillo, and have been joined by Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien to discuss Living a Dharmic Life, a life that is worthy of you, which is the third in our continuing series on Dharma. And if you missed the first 2 programs in the series, you can go to our archive at unity.fm/the Yoga Hour and just look for, actually the dates are September 14th and October 5th. So Yogacharya O'Brien is this program's founding director and regular host, and an acclaimed spiritual teacher, author, and poet. You can find out more about her at the 2 websites, ellengraceobrien.com and csecenter.org. It's totally delightful to have this conversation with you today, Yogacharya. And I look forward to our next conversation, which will be in February.
Thank you so much, Dr. Trujillo. And thanks to all the listeners who support the Yoga Hour and let people know about it. And thanks to the staff at Unity that makes it possible. Jeff running the sound for us every time. It's beautiful, beautiful experience, and thank you so much for hosting.
So join us next week as I have a conversation with Stephen Cope, senior scholar in residence for over 25 years at the renowned Kripalu Center and author of the recently released book, Soul Friends, The Transforming Power of Deep Human Connection. The Yoga Hour is a service project of the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment, a meditation center in the Kriya Yoga tradition with a world headquarters in San Jose, California, but offering also online programs and including the wonderful Dharma 365 program that we have been discussing today, which you can access at the ellengraceobrien.com website. And for more information about the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment, visit csecenter.org. Remember to subscribe to the Yoga Hour podcast at iTunes or Stitcher. And if you're enjoying the program, hey, share it with your friends. I look forward to being with you again when Yogacharya O'Brien is away. Until then, remember, you carry your own healing and wholeness within you. Share your peace and joy with all that you meet. Bye now.
Bye. Thanks again.
Thank you for tuning in to the Yoga Hour, Living the Eternal Way, with Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien. Join us every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific for practical, purposeful methods for spiritually conscious living every day. The Yoga Hour, Living the Eternal Way, only on Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world. This program is brought to you in part by friends and members of the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment in San Jose, California, a ministry in the tradition of Kriya Yoga, the ancient science of self and God realization. www.csecenter.org. Request free literature by writing info@csecenter.org.
Every moment we live can be holy, and all we need to do to experience that state is to make the decision to do so. Everything we do can be a prayer, and by using our innate creativity with intention in every aspect of our lives, that can indeed be true. Author Carla Kincannon wrote, "Creativity is so much more than art making. It is a tool for navigating through everyday experiences to find the sacred in each God-given moment." Discover Creative Spirit, Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Central Time, and experience the joy of connecting to Spirit through creative expression.
A carpenter was working at a cathedral. He was laying tiles on the highest part of the roof and wasn't making an effort to do a good job. His foreman noticed the poor work and said, "You'll have to redo that portion of the roof and do it right." The carpenter asked why. "No one's ever going to see these tiles way up here." The foreman answered, "God will see them, and God is very particular." Although other people may not see it, the universe is aware of your attitude. So are you. Your attitude affects every aspect of your life. If you change your attitude, you will change your life. Changing your thoughts helps change your actions and can result in positive changes in the world around you. This message has been brought to you by the Association of Unity Churches International. To find a Unity Church near you, visit www.unity.org.
Are you ready to live in joy? Is there an area of your life where you could use a miracle? Have you been praying for help and guidance? Come join Lisa and Bill and their guests for an hour filled with practical tips on experiencing miracles, greater abundance, focused, deliberate living, and the peace of God that passeth all understanding. Experience more joy in life. Listen to Living in Joy, Reflections on A Course in Miracles with Lisa Natoli and Bill Free every Friday at 2 p.m. Central here on Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world.